You hear about the, these corporations and these investors, and the problem we've got is both the corporate side and the investor side, obviously the political side. You see, I think the cowardice and not just confronting the Chinese Communist Party, but actually being the business partner to the Chinese Communist Party. Remember, the freedom of the Chinese people, their struggle for freedom is going to be the defining issue of the first half of the 21st century. And whoever assists the Chinese people, only the Chinese people can get their freedom, right? They're the only ones that can fight for and win their freedom. But whoever assists them in that will help to write the history of this time. And now with that, I want to bring in a true hero. This is a defector from, she was at the P3 lab in Hong Kong. Dr. Yan, you've seen her on Fox News. You've seen her with Bill Hemmer. You've seen her on Fox Online. Dr. Yan, thank you very much for joining us at the Falkirk for the Falkirk Center Freedom Summit today.
It's always a pleasure to meet you, sir, and very thank you for inviting me to War Room.
Listen, you've inspired so many people just with your heroic story of what you did to leave Hong Kong and come and tell the story in the West. But specifically, I want to ask a couple technical questions. Tell us about the P3 lab you worked in Hong Kong. What was its role, and particularly what was its role in overseeing or looking at anything that was going on in mainland China?
So the P3 lab I work in Hong Kong actually belong to the University of Hong Kong and the School of Public Health. So the head, Prof. Pieris Malik, and also the other head, Professor Liu Peng, both of them are the WHO consultant for both emerging disease influenza and also new coronavirus. And we are the WHO reference lab. This lab is a top coronavirus lab in the world, and these two experts are the top corona experts in the world. So basically in this lab, we are capable to produce and also analyze all the type of the emerging virus.
The reason this lab is so important, and the reason it's the correspondent lab to the WHO, SARS that happened in the early part of the 21st century had such potential to destroy China that's what this was set up. And Dr. Gabriel Jung, we talked about him. He's the epidemiologist associated with it. This is one of the most prominent locations in the world for doing this, and it's the reason the WHO. The reason we're laying this out, the mainstream media now wants to kind of totally distance themselves from the WHO. So tell us your story. You really are saying that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and their whether it's the Beijing CDC, the entire chain of command knew about the outbreak of this virus in Wuhan and Hubei much earlier than they let on, that they knew about it actually in late December or early January. Explain that.
Okay, actually, since the end of December, 31 December 2019, my supervisor, Prof. Liu Peng, assigned me to do some secret investigation about the unknown pneumonia happened in Wuhan. He clearly told me face-to-face that there is unknown pneumonia happened in Wuhan, and it is caused by some SARS-like virus. And we want to know more information. He need to write the report to Hong Kong government. But actually, there are no official news come from mainland China. So I use my background because I got my PhD and MD from mainland China. I have the huge network in Chinese hospital and also government and research institute. So I turned to my friend and who work under China CDC, had the first hand of information. He told me, as I called, since the end of December, the China government already knows there are over 40 cases confirmed in Wuhan, not as they said 27, and also they got the genome sequence already from Wuhan, not as they stated in the middle of January. And the other thing, most important thing is there are human-to-human transmission exists, and there are family clusters happen. So these are all the key points that I know at that time, and also the Wuhan doctors are very scared. They dare not to say anything, just ask people to wear masks. And I reported to Liu Peng and WHO.
Okay, I just want to make sure we break this down for a second. During this time, people got to remember, I think it was January 14th and 15th, Li He and a delegation of the senior cadre of the Chinese Communist Party was right down the street in the White House, in the East Room, shaking the hand of the President of the United States and signing the first phase of the China deal. Now, I just want to go back, and Dr. Yan, make sure I understand this. You're saying in late December, early January, they knew that they had an outbreak in Wuhan and Hubei province, okay? They knew that they had community spread, human-to-human transmission. You can prove that, and that all happened in the early part of January of 2020.
Exactly, they can prove it.
Okay, and so they came here. What I think people find shocking, you're at a reference lab. Really, a reference lab is kind of, I guess, the supervisory lab to make sure that what's going on in these P3 and P4 labs in mainland China is okay. But on January 12th, the WHO puts out a press release and says, after consultation with senior medical officials from mainland China, the CCP, there's no community spread, there's no human-to-human transmission. Then they tweet out on the 14th, they tweet out the same thing. The exact day, one of the days that the delegation from the Chinese Communist Party is having dinner with their American counterparts here. So was the WHO, did you guys in Hong Kong not get them the right information? Were they lying? Was the CCP lying to them? How did the WHO put out those two proclamations basically publicly when you're saying this was all known 2 weeks or 3 weeks beforehand?
So this also make me surprised at the time, because I know that definitely the WHO experts already know this news, and the CCP government know it even earlier than them. And I don't know why they all collaborate together to hide the truth to the world. And also that's why when mid-January, my supervisor Liu Peng again assigned me to do more secret investigation about this, and I got information. I see no response from him. Then I turned to tell the truth through YouTube media, Mr. and tell the world in Chinese about the news.
Were you ever, we're going to have to jump to a break, but we want Dr. Yan to stay over. We're going to be coming to Milesguo in the next segment also, but I need Dr. Yan to stay through. Were you ever, first you're assigned to find out what's going on, right, as the head lab technician. Then you start finding out, and it contradicts with what the WHO is putting out.
Exactly.
Are you warned? Did anybody say, I mean, do you go to your supervisor and say, hey, there's a big disconnect between what the truth is and what's coming out? And do they say anything to you?
Yes, exactly. So since the beginning of the investigation, my supervisor told me to be careful. And then in the middle of January, exactly on 16 January, when he again asked me to do the investigation, he told me that, I quoted him, don't cross the red line and be careful, if not you will be disappeared.
Dr. Yan, when somebody tells you not to cross the red line, what in your interpretation as someone from mainland China, what's your interpretation of that?
Okay, briefly let me introduce what is the red line. Actually, there is no visible line. It is in our mind, and it is up to how you understand our CCP policy. And whatever they don't like you to talk or don't want you to touch, it is the red line. And somehow you sometimes don't know you already go cross it, and you get punished, as we know Dr. Limeng Liang.
So they essentially threaten you. Okay, I want to turn back to Rahim Kassam to take us out. We're going to come back with Dr. Yan in a minute. We got Milesguo next segment also. Back to Rahim.